Welcome to Season 4 of Might in Motion, the podcast that champions motivation, momentum, mindfulness, and might. I'm Mariana Kinney, your host, bringing you conversations with inspiring leaders and innovators who challenge the status quo and push boundaries in their careers and lives. Whether you're here to grow, lead, or ignite your own journey, we're here to keep you moving forward. Let's dive in. Today, I welcome Jim Keys. He is known internationally as a business and social change agent. Currently spearheading several initiatives in the tech, art, and education space, his career has included serving as Chief Executive Officer of 2 Fortune 500 companies, 7-Eleven Inc. and Blockbuster Inc., and serving on numerous civic boards. Now a best-selling author, Keys has written Education is Freedom. The future is in your hands. Jim, welcome to My Emotion.
It's great to be with you.
I have been really looking forward to this conversation ever since we met about a month and a half, 2 months ago. And one of the reasons why is something that you said. You said that there's a constant value in learning and that has a direct impact, not only to somebody's career, but also the community in which they're a part of. So I'd love to hear more from you on what does that mean, that constant value of learning and that especially the community impact piece. I've never heard anybody really speak to that.
Yeah, I am a sort of a product of that belief that lifelong learning is not only the key to unlocking opportunity for you personally, but professionally. I discovered that really the difference between successful leaders and others or successful companies comes down to that institutionalized willingness and openness to learn. And then as I began to explore this, thesis that success and failure is all about learning and being able to adapt to change, I started looking at an even broader scale, and I looked at whole societies. And really, the challenge with so many societies is that they implode from within. They stop learning. They begin to become a victim of fear and internal turmoil, et cetera, all of which can be cured through the power of knowledge and learning.
Yeah. I that whole mindset of a victim of fear, that's interesting, especially if you think about it from a corporate lens. A lot of people who listen to this podcast are coming from that corporate America space, and it's like almost like innovation gets stuck because there's a fear of maybe making too much change, or I don't know.
Yeah, I've coined the expression change equals opportunity, and it's like, oh yeah, no, great, that sounds good, but it's not a coincidence, I don't think, that the acronym is CEO. Think about it. Change equals opportunity. And it is as I began to dig in and really understand change and how it impacts companies, I realized that, it's the beginning and end of all commerce. Something changes, and someone responds to that change, and they're compensated for it. But what happens inevitably is our human instinct kicks in, and we start to resist change because we fear, we're successful, we don't want to mess this up, so we've got to pull back, we've got to be conservative. And the more that inertia kicks in and that unwillingness to keep changing and keep learning, that opens the door for someone else to come in and respond to that change in a different way and take all of your business.
Yes. Yeah. It's competition. A lot of times people think that, competition should level people up, but then I've also read where it could actually level you down because there's that fear of actually doing something outside of this construct of what am I competing on.
Let me give you a great example. I'm an old retailer, as you know. I had the privilege of leading 7-Eleven worldwide, and I look at retail, and there's so many great examples, so many great case studies. But think about the consummate retailer. I grew up with Sears Roebuck.
Yeah.
And I am old enough, I know I don't look it, but I am old enough to remember Sears Roebuck as a catalog company.
Mm-hmm.
As a kid, I used to look at the Sears catalog and look for like Halloween costumes. I couldn't wait to be a Marine in the Halloween costumes, and or tents or hunting equipment or camping stuff. And I remember just being fascinated with the Sears catalog. And then
Mm.
Sears evolved from the catalog business to stores
Right.
so that they could be more convenient for people to shop. And then along comes Walmart and said, well, we can do stores better. We're
Yeah.
going to do them cheaper and we're going to do more of them and bigger. And, and then along comes Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
Amazon says, well, we can do that, but we can do that better because what we're going to bring you, check this out, a catalog.
In the palm of your
Right?
hand. Yeah.
Right? I mean, think of
Yeah.
it. That's all it is. It's an online catalog. It's the
Yeah.
catalog online. It's called Amazon. And now what's Amazon doing? Amazon is going, well, maybe we should do stores. So they're now building stores. And this
Mm-hmm.
whole thing cycles, but it's all about change and
Mm.
responding to differences in what the consumer wants. And Sears could have been Amazon today,
Yeah. That's interesting.
right?
That's really interesting because if you look at like really any retail, everybody has some sort of finger in online,
Mhm.
right? There's a digital aspect. See, that really came to light during COVID. So like even companies like Home Depot now is like they've are mastering the art of delivery to your home, or
Mhm.
you park your car up front and it gets taken right to your car. But that never was heard of before,
Yeah.
right? And so now it's not just your food, right? But it's also lumber.
Yeah.
It's amazing to see how when a crisis happens, all of a sudden people are innovating, but they're all kind of innovating in a similar vein.
Sure. Sure. Trader Joe's, right? So
Hmm.
popular. Trader Joe's had a couple of stores in California and they were really quirky. They were, let's find these really unusual items from other countries and bring them in, that sort of thing. And then all of a sudden a crisis happened. It was called the grocery store strike, the grocery strike, and all the grocery
Mm,
workers were out of work and Trader Joe's was not unionized. And so it stayed open. And all of a sudden all these people started going to Trader Joe's because the big grocery stores were shut down because of strikes. And all of a sudden people get in there and they went, oh wow, look at all this cool stuff. And it gave Trader that crisis, that change
yeah,
gave Trader Joe's a huge opportunity to become known. And it spawned a terrific growth surge from Trader Joe's that are now available all over the country.
yeah,
But it took a crisis, but not for that crisis. Who knows if Trader Joe's ever would have gone beyond a few stores in LA?
yeah. No, that's a really cool story. I did not know that origin story, and
Yeah.
um, I had a vice president once, and she would always say, "Never waste a good crisis."
Yeah.
Right? Because you get creative, and it's that innovation, that sense of that entrepreneurial spirit really comes out when you're faced with, oh my God, I have this wall and I got to figure out how to get through it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I've got another great one for you. One that I know very personally. I joined 7-Eleven just prior to Black Monday, the big financial
Mm,
collapse, and the company struggled through that. It did a leverage buyout, went private, and it took on a bunch of debt. And by the early 90s, 7-Eleven was bankrupt. And I went to the chairman and asked him if I should stay with the company because I was a pretty young guy. And he told me the story of 7-Eleven's origin. His dad had started
mm,
the company in 1927, and they started it as an ice house. And he said, but in 1928, someone invented something called the Frigidaire, which meant that people didn't come into the store to buy a chunk of ice to put in their old ice box, non-electric,
yep.
but keep it cold. And his uncle, he said, went to the dock and asked the customers what they want. And they said, well, we don't come here for the ice.
Hmm.
We come here for the convenience of getting ice. So sell us other things we need conveniently. And
Yeah.
literally adapting to that change. 7-Eleven would have been out of business, the Southland Corporation would have
Mm,
been out of business in 1930, but for their ability to change. And so the CEO at the time, the chairman at the time, a guy named John Thompson, turned to me and said, Jim, you think convenience is ever going to go away? I was like, well,
mm,
oh, it's It's only going to get bigger. So
Yeah.
he said, we're in the business of selling beer, soft drinks, and cigarettes, but we 7-Eleven at the time have forgotten that our business isn't beer, soft drinks, and cigarettes. It's convenience. And we need to constantly change, like every day, find
Hmm.
things that people need conveniently. And if we
Yeah.
do that, our business will never go away. And
Yeah.
today they
That's
have 80,000 stores.
that's really, really cool. But that's merchandising. That's product offering in a nutshell. That
Classic. Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, even when you think about other types of retail space, it's what is that core value of an organization, of a company? Like convenience, like that. Okay, it's one word. It's so simple for people to understand, and then any merchant should be able, or buyer, depending on like what you name them, right? Like should be able to make a decision because you've got such a clear directive.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I take it to another example. I started my career with an oil company. I mean, literally right out of graduate school, I went to Gulf Oil. And I remember even way back then, that was a long
Mm,
time, way back then, they recognized the need for diversification because they said, don't know about the future of oil. Maybe we need to find other things. And they started looking at these other companies. But I remember distinctly that they saw their business way back then as an oil business.
mm-hmm.
And so many oil companies, so many energy companies still think of that. I tell the energy companies today, I spoke at a energy week in Houston a couple of months ago, and I said, folks, we're not the oil business. We're in the energy business, and the need for energy is going nowhere but up.
Yep.
So just like 7-Eleven, if you can start investing in new forms of energy instead of resisting them as a change to your business model, invest in those new forms of
Mm,
energy so that as energy evolves and changes, you're leading that change,
yeah.
not resisting it, not
Yeah.
following it. So it's just a very different mindset, but
Yeah.
it really highlights the critical importance of change
Mm,
in business and being able to adapt to change, proactively respond to it, because at the end of the day, it's not the change that matters.
right.
It's how
Right.
we respond to that change.
How do you like, when you have a new manager, maybe somebody who they haven't gone through the ringer yet, how do
Right.
you help them understand that concept and adopt it early in their career instead of going through
Yeah.
some hard lessons we've all learned?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it starts at the top, and
Mhm.
leadership really comes down to adapting to change and being able to be sensitive to it and respond to it. And I found that leading is learning. And I know it sounds kind of cliche, but you've got to be a constant learner and a constant teacher, because that
Mm,
employee,
yeah.
it doesn't matter if you embrace change, you have to be able to build a culture of change. So you're teaching of every employee, from that new kid that just came in and is wet behind the ears. They need to understand directly from the CEO the
Yeah.
importance of embracing change, and in their personal career, in their in the company as well, because the company is ultimately only as good as the
Yeah.
combined skill of its employees.
Yep.
So individually, if that individual wants success, they need to be on top and embracing change. But collectively, if the company wants success, it has to
Yeah.
have a culture of embracing change.
Yeah. Hey, listeners, I hope you're enjoying this conversation as much as I am. If you're finding value in these insights, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you're listening. Your support helps us reach more people and bring even more inspiring guests to the show. Let's keep building this incredible community together. A little bit and say, okay, well, what's different now than when we tried it last time? Are those same roadblocks or potholes, or whatever we want to call them, do they still exist today?
Right.
Because we kind of get in our own little way, right? Of we only
Yeah.
want to see what we want to see, but sometimes those older ideas that didn't work the first time actually could work now because you're in a different environment.
Sure. Well, this is I think my next book I'm going to call the corporate entrepreneur, because I consider myself to be an entrepreneur, but I've spent my entire career in very, very large, Fortune 500 companies. And
Yep.
so you say, well, wait a minute now. And if you think about it, those two words, corporate, entrepreneur, if you look both of them up in a dictionary, you'll find corporate entrepreneur is an oxymoron,
Mm-hmm.
right? I
Yeah.
mean, because corporate is all about coming together as one. This is the body of people.
Mm.
An entrepreneur is being unique and an individual, and so they tend to be. It tends to be a bit counterintuitive that you can be a corporate entrepreneur because, as you said, the very culture of the corporation is designed for
Mm-hmm.
conformity, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Standardization and conformity. So it tends to beat the entrepreneur out of the individual if we let it.
Yeah.
But we don't have to let it. And
Yeah.
that's the point.
Yeah. I think new leaders, if they can embrace that on their team and encourage it on their team, it's amazing the kind of ideas and innovation,
Exactly.
cost out, new profit centers, all these things actually start happening because you're opening people up to be creative and explore those new ideas.
Exactly. Unlimited
Yeah.
upside potential.
Yeah.
But it's
100%.
but it's scary. And again, back to this fear thing,
Mm.
it's like, oh, I might get fired. Who's going to fire you and why? And if you do, it probably wasn't the right company for you.
Yeah.
Go somewhere where you can exercise your creativity and be an entrepreneur.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I'm going to pivot just a little bit here because
Sure.
one of the other things that you and I talked about a month and a half, 2 months ago was around mentorship and the impact that that actually can have on somebody's career growth. I am a huge fan of mentorship and mentoring others. I actually like that term better than coaching because I think you have a little bit more of a vested, I don't know, it feels
Yeah.
better to me personally. And over the past 5 years had a big impact on me and my career journey. How has like mentorship impacted you, and what do you encourage in those up and comer leaders on the importance of mentorship?
So I'm going to give you a little different twist on mentorship because it sounds great. Yeah,
Mm.
have some, senior person put
Yoda,
me
come
under
to
their
your
wing
rescue.
and they're going
Yeah.
to coach me and they're going to take the time to personally take interest in me. That's great if that happens, but it doesn't always happen. And,
Mhm.
people are busy and, who are you to some kid that wants to be, mentored. And so it doesn't always happen, but here's how it can happen. A
Mhm.
mentor can be good or bad.
Yes.
I've had some
Ooh.
of my best learnings come from the worst possible bosses. And you know how they mentored me? They showed
Mm.
me what not to do.
Yes.
And
100%.
it was a huge lesson. So it comes down to your mindset. If you're waiting for someone to come over and mentor you to learn, you could be waiting your whole career for that to happen.
Mhm.
But you
Mhm.
can learn from everyone. And the best way well, I'll give you an example of how I earned a mentorship. Um, First of all, yes, I did learn from many, many bad examples, but I also had some good examples. And
Mhm.
here's how I mentioned the CEO or the chairman of 7-Eleven who took me under his wing and gave me that advice about change. You know how
Mm.
that happened? It was on a Saturday. And it was on a Saturday morning. And
Okay.
why was I hanging out with the chairman of the company on a Saturday morning? Here's what I would do. First of all, I was really committed to my job. So I didn't look at the clock. Wasn't a
Mhm.
9 to 5. I was a whatever it takes employee. And on Saturdays, I would go to the office.
Mhm.
And the chairman of the company on Saturday would often look around the parking lot and say, well, there's only 5 cars here. I wonder who's here. Oh, that's Jim's car. Oh, that's Bill's car. And he'd call up and say, hey, I see you at the office. You want to grab lunch? And I found that my
Mm.
chairman was so pleased that people were taking the initiative to on their own time, not because they were required to be at the office, but because they wanted to be, that he would reward us by saying, hey, come on, let's go grab a lunch. and
Yeah.
it and it was in that environment that you take off all the corporate stripes and you're sitting around and you're getting to know a person and they're getting to know you. It was that environment that I was privileged to have that mentorship, but I did it because of proactive stepping out from the crowd, doing something that they didn't do, which
Mm-hmm.
prompted him then to reach out to me and want to be my mentor.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
No, that makes complete sense. I mean, you basically created an opportunity to be seen.
Exactly. Exactly. No, I didn't
And
do it on purpose. I mean, I was an ambitious kid. So I was just showing up at the office. But
yeah.
the reward for it, by stepping out and doing things that others weren't doing, I was
Mm,
standing out from the crowd and I was rewarded for that unusual dedication to work
yeah.
with a mentorship.
Yeah.
That was very
No.
informal.
Yeah. Informal, I think, tends to be the best anyway. I've
Yeah.
been through programs where it's, oh, you get assigned to this person and you're part of their mentor circle. And okay, great. And maybe I've gotten something out of that, but usually what I got out of those is I met somebody that might be more peer to peer that I would never have met before because maybe they were in a different part of a giant organization.
Yeah.
Right. And those are great opportunities too. Like to your
Sure.
point, mentorship does not necessarily have to be the top guy at the company
Right.
because you can learn a lot um, from somebody that might be, sitting a few aisles away from you.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that because I learned that very early on, as an intern at Georgia Pacific, where the engineers listened to like the one guy on the plant floor that did not have the chemical engineering degree and, all that stuff, but he knew more about the operation than really anybody else. And so being
Sure.
able to listen to others is helpful.
Sure. It works.
Yeah, 100%. Um, you know, we've talked a little bit about, you know, being adaptive to change and how that can help make or break, different teams and goals. It sounds to me like it really truly is an asset that somebody can have, that extra arrow in their quiver, if you will, of that adaptiveness.
Yeah. I call it, I've been calling it several things, but as you know, I've written a book called Education is Freedom.
Yeah.
And in the book, I lay out something called the C-suite learnings. I also have been playing with another way to look at it, and you can't see this chart very well, but I call it the hierarchy of success,
Okay.
which basically at the top of the pyramid of the hierarchy is change.
Yes.
But it then builds down the other elements, the building blocks of being able to adapt to change, like confidence, clarity, critical thinking, collaboration. And then at the bottom of the hierarchy, I have this element of character that is to me the foundation of this hierarchy of success. And by character, I mean integrity, gratitude, humility, compassion, willingness to adapt. All of those elements of character that if they're not there, then you're going to resist change. You're not going to be able to build on that foundation, and others aren't going to trust you to lead them. So I've been really spending a lot of time looking at that, not just talking about change, but talking about all of the other elements that are critical that allow you to respond to change. In a nutshell, I call them the meta skills. I was calling them soft skills. People were like, soft skills, soft skills. Okay, meta skills. It sounds new, right?
I love it.
Those things they don't teach us in school, like
I
how to
mean,
have confidence.
And sometimes some people are naturally, I think, born with some of those.
Yeah.
But I do think a lot of them can be learned through seeing it in action.
Yeah, a lot of them can be learned. But what I'm trying to do is not only point out, for example, you have to have confidence. Okay, great. Yeah, that's easy to say. But I'm scared. I walk into the boardroom and I'm scared. Well, I try to provide the steps to confidence. And ultimately, what it comes down, it's almost neuroscience. The neuroscientists will tell you can rewire your brain.
Yes.
because the brain is just a computer, and it is causing, it's firing and it's causing you to respond to outside stimulus. So you walk into a boardroom, you see all these scary looking board members, and you go, oh my gosh, and you panic, and it triggers a reaction rather than walking into that boardroom prepared, because preparation is what helps you rewire that response mechanism. And when you walk in prepared, you're like, yes, let me turn me loose on these guys. I'm going to own this board.
Yeah.
A whole different way of doing it, but anybody can do this. It's just practice. It's like Tiger Woods, didn't just walk up to the first tee and become a superstar at golf. He had to practice. He had to rewire his brain to be able to manage different circumstances. His swing on the middle of the fairway is very different than his swing when he shanks it into the woods.
Right.
But he can still perform, even with an errant tee shot that puts him into the woods. And we can do that. We can do the same thing.
Yeah. And visualizing things, I think, is also really, it's not, some people might say it sounds woo-woo, but I mean, there are meetings that I'm like, okay, I know this meeting is coming, or this presentation. And so not only am I going to practice my presentation or my key speaking points, I'm also going to try to visualize a positive reaction.
Yeah.
And the times I've done that, it's like, wow, I actually like willed the positive action to happen.
Yeah.
Right. Versus if I go in with like, oh, this is going to suck, this is going to be so painful. Guess what?
Yeah.
It ends up being that way.
You know what Yoda would call that? Using the force.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And it works. It works, ironically. And I've also been trying to dig into this balance between, it's not just knowledge, it's not just preparation. There's also that sort of intangible, what is it that makes that makes Michael Jordan, in the championship game, kind of reach a completely almost inhuman level of performance? What is that? And because it's preparation gives them the confidence, it gets them to a certain level. But there are some even stellar athletes that can rise to that occasion. So I call it another thing, and I've evoked Yoda and his use of the Force. But to me, it's a metaphor for faith, and not faith. And it doesn't have to be faith in the religious sense. Yeah. Belief in yourself.
Yeah.
Belief in the universe. If I want something bad enough, the universe will conspire to make it happen.
Yes.
And that combination of faith and knowledge is a really powerful 1-2 punch, because if you believe that you can do something, and then you have the knowledge to be able to learn how to do it and practice it, that combination allows you, I believe, to accomplish absolutely anything.
Yeah. Love it. I love that. That sings to my soul, Jim. It really does. I love like that thought process. I've tried to encourage that on different teams that I've led over the years. And when you see people just be open to that, it's really cool to see how, somebody who might have been beaten down, because we've all inherited teams, right? You've inherited teams, I've inherited teams, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I didn't choose all these people, they didn't choose me as their leader. And so there's like this distrust. But once you start building that trust, I call it chaos to community. Like that's the arc I love to say. And you can get to a sense of community. It's amazing the magic that happens, because everybody wants to help everybody else get better, and they want the team to get better and the company to get better.
Yep, exactly. You want to hear another metaphor I've been using that's a lot of fun? I had the privilege of serving as chairman of the Dallas Symphony for a while, and I'm a frustrated musician myself, and I can pick up a trumpet and I can make it play, but kind of stinks. It's just not solo trumpet. Not so great. At least, if I was Harry Connick Jr. or something, maybe I could, but no. And then I sat there on stage one day and I'm looking at this orchestra and I'm listening to them practice, and they sounded horrible, individually, warming up, cacophony of nasty sounds as they're each warming up. And I thought, well, what would happen if these instruments were people? And the violin's looking at the cello going, fatso,
Yeah. Yeah.
you're
You're
just
holding
too
us
big.
back.
And now
Yeah.
look at the bass. I mean, the bass is even worse. You're just obese, and they're both looking at the
Mm.
oboe going, you're squeaky and you're skinny and you look funny. You're not even like an instrument. I don't know what you are. And then the drums, and they're like, dude, you're so loud. And they're all making fun of each other
Mm.
until the conductor steps up and picks up his baton, and they all start to play in harmony, and you realize the power
Mm.
of collaboration, and the
Oh,
and that the diversity of those instruments, it's the differences in those instruments that makes that harmony even more powerful.
I love that. That is a mic drop moment. I love that visual. I can hear it. I can feel it. Um,
So true.
and I love that when you think about teams and leading organizations.
It's a corporation. We're all
Yeah.
different. We look different. We act different. We have different skills. We have different behaviors. And
Yeah.
individually, we look at each other and go, why are you even on this team?
Mm.
And then you
Hmm.
realize that, oh, wow, you've got a skill that I don't have.
Yeah. You bring a value.
Yeah.
And
And
as that conductor, as that leader, you have the opportunity to help others see the value.
exactly. And bring out their best performance.
Hmm.
And bring
Hmm.
out their best performance makes everybody want to perform better.
I love
And
it.
then you have the success of the team.
Yeah.
It's really, I love the metaphor because sitting there on stage, it really made me stop and pause and think about this is leadership. It's the same
Hmm.
thing. The
Hmm.
same thing.
Oh, that's beautiful. So, Jem, I know I'm going to pop a whole bunch of links in the show notes, but
Okay.
if somebody wanted to reach out to you, if they're like, okay, I want to learn more about his books, or I want him to come speak to my organization, what is the best way for people to connect with you?
Probably my website, jameswkeys.com. Yeah, it's up there.
Right at the top. Perfect. Oh,
Yep,
I didn't even
right at
get
the top.
there we
And
go.
I can also give you an email. It's actually in reverse. It's keys, Keyes, James, James, w@gmail.com.
Awesome. I will throw that in the show notes as well. So I love to take notes, Jem, and you probably saw me looking down with my handy dandy pen, but that's how like things resonate with me. I'm a big like actually writing things physically down. And so some of the things that I jotted down was, the conversation we had about tiers going from a catalog to physical stores, which then gets overcome by Walmart, which then turns into Amazon, which is just an online catalog, and how there's this constant cycle of innovation, right? And it's really how do you, as an organization, as a company, respond to change that customers are wanting? And when you're able to and willing to go through that change cycle, you can continue to win as a company and as an organization. Adapting to change can create wins for everybody. You talked about how 7-Eleven, their origin story was really more about convenience than they getting a block of ice, right?
Right.
And that having that mindset around we are convenience drove a change in merchandising strategy and what was being brought to the table, which helped turn them around. And we talked with that as well as far as like being responsive to change. It was leadership. It comes down to leadership being willing to adopt, and if you are a really good leader, you have to be a constant learner and a constant teacher so that you can help everybody elevate up. You talked about being about CEO, where change equals opportunity. So there's the very big theme here of having that ability to be a change agent and taking on lifelong learnings and driving opportunity. Because when you're able to do that, there's just so much success that can come your way. Um, we also talked about mentorship and how mentorship can be good or bad. It doesn't have to be formal, and you can create opportunities for yourself. Don't wait for somebody to tap you on your shoulder and say, I want to be your mentor, Jem. No, I'm going to create opportunities where I'm seen, where I'm adding value to others, and therefore others want to add value back to me. And then finally, the concept of the powerful force of faith and knowledge coming together can really help you come to the table with much more confidence. Probably the hardest thing for people to learn is practice, but it is that faith in oneself, faith in your abilities, and bringing that knowledge, that lifelong learning to the table. That coming together is that force that I think everybody wants. Your final story or visual around the orchestra, I think was really powerful, especially for new leaders. Having that mindset coming in of as a conductor of a team, there are things that every individual brings to the table. And when you can get those individuals to work together, you get that beautiful harmony. So those are my notes.
Good job.
And I would say, Jim, this was phenomenal. This is exactly what I needed today. So thank you so much for your time. And I know that so many others are going to gain so much from this discussion and listening to it. So thank you again.
I'm happy to help, and I hope if your readers found it to be interesting, they'll check out the book. Education is Freedom. The future is in your hands, literally, is the subtitle of the book. And as you can tell, I mean that quite literally, because I've tried to provide this sort of a roadmap for leaders. It could be anything from students to leaders to professionals to just someone that wants to be a better citizen of the world.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Might in Motion. Remember, every step forward counts, and the power to create momentum starts with you. If you enjoyed today's conversation, please subscribe, share, and leave us a review. It makes a huge difference. Until next time, stay inspired, stay mindful, and keep moving with might.